All right, let's go ahead and get started. It's been a couple months since I've last put up anything, for better for worse. Um, I've just been busy, been a lot of things going on, and surprise, surprise, the world hasn't ended. So I'm still trying to figure out how I'm trying to orient more or less what I want to do on this channel. Um, I don't think it would be, I guess, it's not feasible to do, I guess, like news the way I wanted to. Maybe I can try and incorporate it here and there in the future. But I think trying to do the news commentary the way I did for the last couple episodes is I'm gonna have to actually like sit down and figure out how to actually do it rather than just winging it. Um so for today, I thought we'd get a little personal and break down um the political compass test. I'm gonna take it, and I've also pulled up one from Pew Research, political typology quiz. I'm sure it'll follow along more or less the same lines, and then eight values, which kind of similar, I guess. I just figure I'll pull up a couple. I really don't know if I'll be able to get through all three, but I figure at least political compass, considering it's like the most widely used political compass test that's taken. I mean, I've had my gripes with it. I think that this test leans or skews the test taker to left libertarian. Um, and I think it misses the mark on accurately describing a couple things. Um, but we'll take it, and I'll take it a little bit slow. Try and delve and try and cut through if there's any nonsense that I see taken in this test. I've never taken it before. Um, so in terms of what something like this will describe me as, this is gonna be the first time ever having an outside source describe my political leanings. In the past, I mean, as a young adult and student, I've had to juggle different political ideas, both in the economic camp, the cultural camp, and whatnot. And I think the political compass test, I think, misses an emerging aspect, which is somewhat captured, but I think at least, considering this test was 2001, I think maybe it's just me, but what is considered, I guess, progressive versus conservative, and because the political compass, it describes left and right, which are economic scales, and then it describes authoritarian and libertarian, which I think it describes as like the like cultural sort of aspect of a society, and I think it's kind of blended in, but I think that dynamic of progressive versus conservative is a dynamic that is somewhat captured by the four different squares, but is also at the same time missed. And so we'll get deeper into that as we take this test. But before I even get started, I'm going to take a look at the website. It's a pretty simple HTML website. It's an old website. It's been around for a while. It's got a lot of reading. It has the different elections. I really don't care about any of the other elections except the U.S., so you can kind of see what the political leanings of the different U.S. presidents and candidates were. So it has Trump as super far right, super authoritarian, and Biden as in that same camp, but not as much. The Libertarian candidate described as right libertarian, and then the Green Party as left libertarian. So that was the 2020 election. 2016, Trump's first. Again, just as authoritarian, less right. It had Hillary Clinton further right, not as authoritarian. And then Gary Johnson, like moderate in terms of authoritarian, libertarian, and Jill Stein, somewhere in that same vicinity in terms of that, but on the left scale. Then going into 2012, Obama's second term, somewhere in the middle of right authoritarian, and then the other Republicans are just further in terms of right and more authoritarian. And then Ron Paul, it has as like not libertarian, just like kind of moderate in terms of that aspect, and then super far right. And this is where I kind of get my gripes with the test, because Ron Paul is about as libertarian, especially for U.S. Politics, considering compared to other governments around the world, the U.S., at least in its founding and in its documents, like the Constitution and the Federalist Papers, some of the sort of literature that the U.S. is based off of is a lot more freedom oriented and individual rights oriented and libertarian oriented compared to a lot of the European countries. And so to have like the most recent libertarian candidate, that was arguably the most libertarian candidate to be like up here in terms of the middle of authoritarian libertarian, like I think doesn't describe this candidate well enough. But anyways, 2008. This was Obama's first first election, and we see it's way too many candidates, and really none of it really matters, because in the end you have Joe Biden and Obama, and then McCain, Palin, and here it's like this here it shows Mike Gravel as, and I know some of these names may not be like all that familiar considering it's from 2008. But anyways, like you have Mike Gravel more libertarian than Ron Paul. Like I find that hard to believe, but I mean, again, I was 10 years old in 2008, so in terms of my understanding of how the politics of the time were are retrospective in nature and not, first from first person. But anyways, here it has Barack Obama and Joe Biden like super middle of the road, like not very far right, not very far left, not super authoritarian, not super libertarian. But then in 2012, you have Barack Obama shoot way all the way up. And in 2020, Joe Biden is again more or less in the same spot as where Obama was in his second term. So I find the at least here the way that the users here that describe the presidents to be a little bit more exaggerated than what it actually is. Anyways, let's the reading lists. Authoritarian left. It's not that big of a reading list. Nothing crazy. Like I feel like there's a lot more books you can read to find for um, the authoritarian left. Communism is not love; it is the hammer which we use to crush the enemy. Um, from Mao, who was the dictator in China, in communist China. I'm shocked that that Marx isn't on here. Um, Nothing that he wrote is on here. I mean, it's good that Lenin's on here because he's a pretty prominent figure in the authoritarian left in history. But to find nothing from any of the other authoritarian left leaders, whether it be something that they wrote themselves or literature oriented on their leadership. To the authoritarian right, to me, this is just a big joke. Like, how you gonna have Jordan B. Peterson as an authoritarian right? Like this is a joke to me. Like the 12 Rules. I do not own this book. I've listened to some of the things that Jordan Peterson has said and spoken about. I think what the basic premise of what the 12 Rules of Life are is that it's essentially like a lot of the things that he's spoken about, like get your room in order, take care of yourself, fix yourself before you try and go out and fix the world, and sort of taking that personal responsibility, and making things about the individual and one's, I guess, yeah, just that personal responsibility in trying to fix what seems like chaos and turning that into order. And having a book by Donald Trump, I mean, I'm not even like I'm highly doubtful that he even wrote this book himself to begin with. I'm sure someone else wrote it and he just threw his name on it. But like what like William F. Buckley, I guess even then, like, it's hard to say that this is that this would be considered right authoritarian, like Machiavelli. Like this is authoritarian right wing. Thomas Hobbes, authoritarian right wing. Like this without a doubt. Who else do they have on here? Like I didn't even see this. Mein Kampf, authoritarian right wing. Pretty accurate. I can't say I've heard of every single one of these books, so I can't really comment on something from Margaret Thatcher or Peter Hitchens, but it considering some of the other literature they have for this section, I would be hard pressed to believe that every single one of these books belongs here. Anyways, the word conservative is used by the BBC as a portmanteau word of abuse for anyone whose views differ from the insufferable, smug, sanctimonious, naive, guilt-ridden, wet pink orthodoxy of that sunset home of the third-rate members of that third-rate decade 1960s. All right, the word conservative is Jesus Christ. Okay, let's fix this. The word conservative is abuse. Let's see. A large trunk or suitcase, typically made of stiff leather, opening into two equal parts. A word, blending the sounds and combining the means of two others. For example, motel from motor and hotel, or brunch. Podcast is for me too. Okay, so So that means the word conservative is used as a portmanteau of abuse, that's at home, third-rate members of the third-rate decade in the 1960s. This is unnecessarily complicated. I mean, I know the authoritarian right gets shit on a lot, especially in history, for the atrocities done by authoritarian right-wing governments, specifically in the 1940s. Um, but to continue to shit on specifically one specific political category over any of the other ones more than the rest, I think, like it shows the political leanings inherent in the design. That's not to say that anything done here is correct. I just think it's a display of the bias of the people who on this website. Moving on, libertarian left. Everyone wants to be a left libertarian because it's the easiest to defend. Under capitalism, man exploits man. Under communism, it is just the opposite. Of course. Cornel West, Race Matters, left libertarian, of course. Again, I can't say I'm going to know every single one of these authors or pieces of literature. But and Jesus Christ, this is a lot longer of a list. None of these. Let's see. Anything. Noam Chomsky used to be a left liberal. I think the left liberals obviously it's very surface level in its ideology, because it's a hippie dream. Left libertarian, it's just the opposite of exploitation. It's good. It's just that easy. It's that easy of an argument or of a claim, when like a lot of things in life, especially in politics and culture, it's if it's that simple, then that means it's not all it's cracked up to be. Like, if it ought to be more complicated. Now, that's not to say this level of complex is what's required, because this is just, it's unnecessary sophistry. And I guess to put it differently, it's unnecessarily complex for the sake of just being complex. But anyways, libertarian right. It is if you ask me to name the proudest distinction of Americans, I would choose, because it contains all the others, the fact that they were the people who created the phrase "to make money." A quote by Ayn Rand. I have not read anything by Ayn Rand. The only thing I know of Ayn Rand is the basics of her story. She fled a communist country to come here and spread fear and try and correct the record. At the time, journalists were putting into favorable light the communist countries and not really covering the atrocities committed by those communist countries. And so she was essentially taking the opposite stance, to the most extreme degree, that being selfish was a virtue. To say that's right or wrong is, again, up to you to determine. But under libertarian right, at the far spectrum, you find someone like Ayn Rand, where if you are if you don't bother me and you just let me do what is in my best interest, and everyone does that, then everyone is bound to benefit. And it's a little bit more, again, like everything else, it's a little bit more complex than that. But, um, but in its basics, like if everyone does what's most beneficial for them, then you're gonna find that everyone benefits. Um, so this section has, again, like the other one, some decent uh, pieces of literature, some not so well. Like stuff from Milton Friedman is going to be pretty accurate, or I guess reflective of what right libertarianism is supposed to look like. Um, Thomas Friedman, Murray Rothbard, again, like this is like I know this for sure is or Mises, Ludwig von Mises. So at least here in the right, Ayn Rand, more Rothbard, um, and so here having a much larger um, spread of literature. Yeah, I'm going to imagine that some of these are going to be good picks, some of these aren't going to be good picks, and that's across all four of the spectrums. That some of them are going to be good picks, and some of them are just not going to be that good of a pick. But it's interesting to note that some of these have a wider array to pick from than the others. That's not to say that it's hard to find. It's just whether or not you want to ascribe a certain piece of literature to a certain piece of politic, or how you describe a certain piece of literature, I guess. But it's already been 22 minutes, so I guess we'll go ahead and get into it. I don't know how long it's going to take. I'm sure it's going to take me a cool minute. Let's see. Before taking the test, please note that this isn't a survey, and these aren't questions. They're propositions. To question the logic of individual ones that irritate you is to miss the point. Some of the propositions are extreme, and some are moderate. That's so how you can show whether you lean towards extremism or moderation on the compass. Your responses should not be overthought, and some of them are intentionally vague. Their purpose is to trigger reactions in the mind, measuring feelings and prejudices rather than detailed opinions on policy. So I'm going to do the exact opposite of what the instructions says. I'm going to overthink every single one of them. I'm going to question the logic. What I'm not going to do is put opinion on specific policy. But I guess a part of the point is trying to cut through some of the nonsense, if I find any. And then also, I guess a part of it is me just putting out, considering this episode is going to be like, I guess a little bit more personal to me in what I think or what I agree with, what I don't agree with. So I guess we're gonna find out together where I lie in this political spectrum, because I already have some preconceived notions. But we'll see. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. And so, already off to a good start. On the right libertarian spectrum, what the argument you'll find is that if something benefits transnational corporations, then everyone wins. Whereas left authoritarians are going to argue that I guess just the left in general. No, well, again, and this is debatable, but left authoritarians are going to argue that globalization that benefits transnational does not serve humanity. Um, and so, to a right libertarian, this question, or not this question, but this proposition is is redundant, because to say it should serve one or the other, whereas in the lens of specifically right libertarian, this is just one statement. It's not one or the other, because humanity and transnational corporations both benefit. Um, and that's kind of where I line up. If you have if you have a company that does business in multiple different countries and it's able to succeed globally, um, then at the end of the day, that that company is able to do more, expand, and produce more, serve better, and whatnot. Um, it should serve humanity rather than. So I guess I'd say I disagree. I'd always support my country, whether it was right or wrong. Um, Man, that's a hard one. Um, I'm I'm going to say agree, because at least specifically for the U.S., the foundations and the ideas that this country was founded on are correct. They are the right ideas. However, if the country is going in a wrong direction, to disagreeing with the direction that we are going on is not a sign of a lack of support, but rather support in trying to put things on the right track, I guess. So I'm going to go ahead and say agree here. No one chooses their country of birth, so it is foolish to be proud of it. No. The circumstances of your birth weigh heavily on you. And we find this. Oops. We find this argument everywhere that, I mean, even in the super specific examples of like where you're born determining what school you go to, whether or not you grow up on a certain side of the highway, determining which high school you go to, making a big, essentially like that is the determining factor on whether or not you're going to be successful or not. Um, it it is just as relevant in terms of place, in terms of country of birth, um, because even if you're a newborn, well, no, because and again, like this is one of those hard ones, because there are many different circumstances in which, like, of course there are always going to be outliers and for hypotheticals and whatnot, but for the most part, where you are born and raised influences your behavior and your thought, um, and and you carry that wherever you go, regardless of how much you learn and you change. Like you still have that foundation. Um, I think it's. I don't think it's foolish to be proud of where you come from, because either it is, uh, it can be waving as a flag of like, oh, I used to, you know, think this, but now I think this, or it could just be these were good ideals and this is a good place, and I will wear my country as a marker of support. Um, because I mean, you find this everywhere, that even people that immigrate here from their previous country are still proud of the country that they left. And I don't think it's wrong, um, because I mean, your origin, like it is a part of your identity, um, and so wiping that origin, um, kind of wipes away some of your identity. Let's see. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. Now, this is just obviously it's racism. And this is what I'm talking about. Like to have something so flat out like racist like this. Um, and I can only imagine which part of the political compass like this adds points to. Um, like I don't know. I would like to see how the test score, like which questions add to which score. Um, I don't know. Maybe I can email the people who run this website, see if I can get that. Because a question like this, like what political ideology do they think this adds to? Um, that would be something I would like to know. But uh, there's no race that is superior to another. There may be you can one can argue differences, but at that point you're looking at like the minute differences that are non-consequential at that point. Um, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Agree. Um, you can always make the best of a bad situation, but that's not to say that tread lightly. Don't start to depend or become too fond of your enemy just because they're also an enemy of your enemy. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. I mean, it depends on what that international law is. It depends on the action. I mean, the fact that, and then it throws in sometimes, like, sometimes anything is justified. Like, it depends on what the sometimes is, right? So to have something like this being so vague, and of course, that's the intention of the political quiz. Um, but you can think of a scenario for anything in which anything is justified. Military action that defies international law. From the stance of trying to not disturb the peace, you would say no. But if another country has wronged you to such a degree in which you must take action despite, international law says you have to go through some formal process. Um, man, military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. I mean, I already don't like the fact that we have these international um, organizations like the UN, NATO. Um, like they have their own laws in terms of like what one country can do to another. Those are like the two big ones, obviously. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and say agree on the fact that if the U.S. were to take action that defies the UN or NATO, one, I don't want to say it undermines, but it kind of discredits, I guess, some of the authority brought upon the UN, especially if the U.S. is the one taking the military action. If another country tries to take military action against international law, no, I think the more I think about it, the purpose of, from a very general standpoint, like the purpose of international laws is try to have some sort of organization and structure, so that way there's a bit of there are boundaries, that there's processes, that there are lanes of communication, so that way conflict can be resolved before going to military action. Um, but of course, if action is needed and you got to just strike back, I mean, while violence is wrong, I think the I can find, like, I think in more instances than not. Man, now that I think about it more, um, military action that defies international laws sometimes is justified. I mean, sometimes yes, but I think anything that stops troops from going to take military action, I think is good. Um, of course, if there's an immediate threat, you want to neutralize an immediate threat. In which case, then yeah, like, go in, neutralize the threat. There, ask for forgiveness later. But I don't think, like, it would be hard. I would be hard pressed, for me at least. I mean, maybe there's someone else out there that can think of times where you had to go and defy and take action swiftly to prevent more catastrophe from happening. Um, so while I don't necessarily agree with the existence of the UN and NATO, I think their presence, I guess, sort of does kind of act as a leash for each of the other countries from doing anything too rash. Specifically the US, even though it does whatever it wants. Kinda, but still. I mean, and that goes for a lot of the countries on the Eastern Hemisphere. Um, like, no country is going to be swift to act just because the reign of the U.S. Army is gonna come put the boot down on anyone's neck it wants. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and disagree here on this question. Whew. There's now a whirring fusion of information and entertainment. Agree. The news is no longer news. It is just entertainment. Um, I mean, it's as simple as that. It's not even like, sure, worrying, but it is. It's not. It's not becoming this. It is this. If you put on your local news, like, it's all entertainment. Like, a lot of the stuff doesn't need to be put out. But anyways, we'll continue. Now the economy. We're talking attitudes here, not the FTSE index. Let's see. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. Strongly agree. Poor people in Latin America probably have more in common with the poor people of Europe than they do with the upper elites of Latin America. Like, anyone who's poor feels the struggle of being poor. So while poor and rich Latin Americans may speak the same language if they're from the same country, those are two completely different lives. Whereas someone poor in Europe and someone poor in Latin America, like, they may speak a different language, but they understand, like, what it's like to be hungry, what it's like to be thirsty, and what it's like to struggle to get through the day, feed your kids, and try and find that next dollar or whatever. So class, I think, is a very distinct marker that I think is not looked at because it's too easy of an answer that I guess wipes away a lot of the power of the elite class, because once it's shown that there's a lot more of like that. Once the 99% realize that the 99% has a lot more power than the 1%, um then that 1% isn't going to be in charge for much longer. But we're we're so much more divided by a lot less important dividing lines that um we're not able to make that progress to uplift those in the lower economic classes. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. And this question is very interesting today, um, because the United States Federal Reserve, with its dual mandate of controlling inflation and controlling unemployment, not every central bank in every other country does that. Some of them just care for just inflation, and it's up to another aspect of the government to control for unemployment. And so, whether or not it is correct for a central bank to control for both unemployment and inflation is another question. Well, I guess it is this question. Which is more important? Which of those mandates should the U.S. central bank focus on more? And currently, um, in July of 2023, the U.S. central bank has said on multiple occasions that it is much more concerned about inflation than unemployment, and that it will do whatever it needs to do to get inflation under control, which essentially means I don't care about unemployment at this rate. Um, the chairman of the Federal Reserve has said that there's going to be pain, there's going to be economic slowing, um, negative growth, and whatnot. But that the short term pain of getting inflation under control is going to be a lot more important, because if inflation is not under control, then not only is unemployment going to go through the roof, but so is inflation. And so, sucking through unemployment now to get inflation under control will, in the long term, be better. And I think I agree with this. I think having a 4% unemployment rate um, as their goal, I think that's what it is. I think it's 4%. I could be wrong. Um, but that means 96% is employed. Um, and that's a staggering number to think that 96% of people are going to be employed. I think we're better off. Um, man, I don't know about wherever you work at, but I know when I look to my left and my right, and I think you're in charge of me. Um, you're like, you got the job, and now you're in charge of me. I think we can accept a little bit higher of an unemployment rate. I think people are. I think there's way too many incompetent people working and in positions where they shouldn't be. So if we can get a little bit more competition and make the workplace a more competitive place to be, uh, then I think we'd be better off as a whole. But again, that's the conversation about unemployment. In terms of inflation, for the past 3 or so years, we've been living with high inflation, um, and at its peak, it was like 9.1% year over year inflation. And to think that if you had a dollar, what month was it? I want to say it was earlier this year. So maybe in like I think it was like February or something. Um, it could have been last year, but to think that when we got the mark, or when we got the data that came out that said inflation was 9.1% year over year. Essentially, what that means is if you had a dollar the year prior, this year you essentially had 91 cents, and that is a lot of money down the drain. Now, it's not to say that you actually lost money, but what that dollar was able to buy you was no longer a dollar's worth. If it costed a dollar to buy 2 pounds of bananas, now you're not getting 2 pounds of bananas. Now you're getting 1.8 pounds of bananas for $1, um, which is like, I don't know, a banana and a half. I don't know, but that's the point. Is if bananas are worth more per pound because of inflation, then that means your $1, which used to get you 2 pounds, no longer gets you 2 pounds, because the per pound. And that's the easiest way to think about inflation, is that it's because there's more money circulating, and either the same or less goods in supply, that in order to meet that supply and demand, just things have to cost more. And of course, this is a very simplified description of how inflation works. Um, it it really is theft, is what it is. So having to ensuring that inflation is kept at a manageable level, that's going to be steady and predictable. At least you can work around that. Like as as one can still make the argument that having 2% inflation year over year as the goal of the central bank, like, if you know that more or less inflation is going to be around 2%, you can invest around that, you can save around that. But just know that if you're not actively doing anything, then you're losing money the same way you are if inflation's at 9%. It's just not as fast. Moving on. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. I'm going to go ahead and strongly disagree with this. I don't think you can. I don't think you can trust regulation neither, to protect the environment. I'm not going to say that zero regulation is the answer, but I think to say that, especially where we are now, there are tons and tons of regulations on companies, for the smallest of things. And I think that it is, it's obviously not working, and just giving more power to the government to try and protect the things that it can't. It's not working, and it's only making the problem worse. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need, is a fundamentally good idea. Now, this is a communist teaching. At its surface, like, it sounds good. It sounds like a good idea. Like, you work as much as you can work, and you get as much as you need. On its face, sounds good, but just it'll never work that simply. It is wise words. It is good to use in a very small group, where strengths and weaknesses can be covered up and balanced, but on a much larger scale, it just doesn't work, for a multitude of reasons. And maybe that's something I can break down later. But I want to say agree, but it is very surface level of how good of an idea it is. Um, anyways, the freer the market, the freer the people, and this is very laissez-faire in terms of how it's thinking. I I'm inclined to say yes. Um, the freer the market, the freer the people. Um, I think with open markets, like there's obviously going to be scammers. There's going to be fraudsters, and people are going to get taken advantage of. At the end of the day, the best product, the best man will win. Um, Good ideas shine. The truth will eventually come to the top. And what we find is that in controlled markets where things have to be done according to specific guidelines, um, it it limits what, like, very tight left and right limits. What they do is they create bad incentives to, as people try to like find loopholes, or try to do like slimy things within those um set boundaries. So I think having freer markets allows people to go buck crazy, like buck wild with uh, every idea, and I think the that allows people to do essentially what they want to do. So yeah, I'm inclined to think that the freer the market, the freer the people. Um, yeah, it's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now bottled or branded consumer product. Um, no. Um, if you really needed water, I mean, at least here in the United States, the tap water is clean enough in most places to drink out of. That's not to say everywhere is clean. Um, and in a lot of restaurants, a lot of food establishment places, you can always just go and get some water. I've had to before. You just go up and like, hey, can I get a cup of water? They give you that little plastic like cup or whatever, and most of the time they'll fill it up for you. Like, here's your water, because they know you're gonna go fill it up with soda, and then you go fill it up with soda anyways. Um, but of course, when you're paying for bottled water, you're not paying for the water. You're paying for the plastic and the labor and the transportation. Um, but the the need for water is, of course, very fundamental to just life in general. And bottled water is not exactly like the most hard to find now it can be. Water can be a hard commodity um to find, but I don't think it is a sad reflection on our society. I think it's with how many different variations of bottled water, to the extent like every single person has their own different flavor of bottled water that they like. And to me, like, it all tastes the same except for Arrowhead. Arrowhead tastes the most plastic, and every other water bottle tastes the same. Um, but I think bottled water is just it's just that, it's just water. Like, if someone is really hurting for water, they can go get water. Um, Bottled water is just, if someone's willing to buy bottled water, then they're willing to buy bottled water. Like, we're at the point, like, there's that one animated movie with like the whole thing about bottled air or whatever, and how like silly of an idea that was supposed to be for a cartoon, but like it's an actual thing now to have bottled oxygen or something like that, and it's supposed to be like, I don't know, for athletes or something, to get that rush of oxygen to recover or something. I don't know exactly, but like the idea that was once the idea of like a kid's cartoon movie is now like a real thing. It If someone's willing to buy it, then is that a sad reflection? Is that really a sad reflection of our society, or is it a sign of like, I think we're doing all right. We're doing all right that we can do these things. Land shouldn't be a commodity be bought and sold. I'm going to right off the bat strongly disagree. Um, the o- original be a commodity be bought and sold. Right off the rip, gonna strongly disagree. Um, the original iteration of the Constitution, which guaranteed the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, originally was the life, liberty, and land. Um, Property rights are very important, especially in um, capitalist economies. It is essentially the center of a capitalist economy is private property. That land is specifically belonging to an individual, and that individual can do whatever they want with that land, whether it be productive or unproductive. Living in a house is unproductive. It doesn't produce anything besides the calling for maintenance and repairs to plumbers and electricians and general handymen. But you're not producing anything by living in a home bought on a piece of land. Someone who takes a piece of land and builds a store or a factory or whatever, like they make a venture out of a piece of land that becomes profitable or eventually, but that productivity is like doing something with that land that eventually becomes productive. That is that individual's right to do that with that land. Um, just owning land is like that is it is fundamental and center um, to a lot of the things that we do that we don't even think about on a day-to-day basis. Even if you don't own the land, but you're renting or leasing or whatever you got going, whatever situation you got going on, it is because at somewhere someone owns that piece of land, and they decided what to do with that piece of land. And so, for as easy as it can be to just say there should be no landlords, the fact that the landlord exists means that there's a space to live. Because land by itself is most of the time just dirt or just grass or forestry, greenery or desert. It is what people do with that land that gives it value. And that value becomes what we as the end user are willing to pay for it. So whether you're renting or leasing or buying, like what you're paying is what the overall market agrees is what that piece of land is worth. And then when it comes to productive uses of land, like a factory or whatever, the cost of that land gets added into the selling of whatever product over a long period of time or short period of time or however long, over a period of time, until the profit eventually is recuperated to pay off whatever that initial investment of land was. But again, like in both instances, the center of what one is able to do with that land is because land is a commodity that you choose what to do with it. If you don't want your piece of land and you just want money to go do something else, you could just sell your piece of land. And if you want to go out and start a business, or if you want to go and build a home, you buy a piece of land, or you could buy a pre-built home, and on that home is the land that that home sits on. Um, I, I, it's hard to make the argument that land shouldn't be a commodity, but the, it falls under the lines of trying to be empathetic to people who don't own land. And there's a lot of people that don't own land. I don't own a house. I don't own land. I'm renting. Um, and I would like to one day own my own home. Um, but I'm not hopeless that one day I won't be able to. I know there are a lot of people out there that are hopeless that they'll never own a home. And to that they argue, and to that that's where a lot of the anger comes from, that no one should own land. Um, I think it's a very backwards way of thinking, that if I can't, then no one can. Um, that it ought to be more, that it is more equitable, that it's fair, that it if everyone is afforded some piece of land to live or to do what they want with, then you know, some people are just gonna squander it, but some people are going to make the most of it. And you'll only find that if the land isn't treated like a commodity, but like something that is given to you. But that's not the argument I'm gonna make. Where are we? It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. Um, I think that speculators out on Wall Street, while some, it is not 100% bad, but I think there are a lot of people that like. There is a chunk of all that um, financial play, a lot of that money play that doesn't add value, but extracts value. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and give agree. Actually, because I don't know what else this is referring to, but manipulate money and contribute nothing to society. So I mean, yeah, the easy example is like the people on Wall Street. I'm sure that might be where this is trying to get to. But I think also the people that work at just a regular bank, um, like that is manipulation of money. I mean, it and banks. It's not that banks don't add nothing, but it's the way they go about adding to the society. And then the people in government who also manipulate money and also either contribute nothing or suck out from the society. I'm gonna leave it as agree, although I want to put strongly agree. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. I'm gonna go ahead and say, mm, agree. I think it is good that if we protect made in America, and bolster that to make it more competitive with anything made in China, it does conflict with free markets, no intervention, no regulation. Um, but and again, this is it's the time we're living in now is a little bit different than 2001 when the test was first created, but it is so hard to get anything made in America that is, in terms of price wise, competitive with anything made overseas. And in terms of quality, it's hit or miss sometimes. that stuff made in America will sometimes be really good, and sometimes it's just going to be straight trash. Um, and so I think having some protectionism on to help certain aspects of uh, trade would help, um, to bolster whatever sector it is that just needs some protecting to make that sector profitable, allow for innovations, allow for things to get more efficient and cheaper, to so that eventually, with the goal that there will be no protection eventually afforded to that sector. Um, but sometimes, especially like in a time like now when with no protections, it'd be really hard to try and get the U.S. to back being the competitive um, production house it used to be. Let's see. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver profit to its shareholders. Agree. I think a company that tries to do anything but make a profit, um, I think eventually will delete itself. Um, the whole purpose of a company is to create a product and sell it efficiently as possible, with costs being low and enough of a profit return. That's not to say that the decisions along the way have to be at someone else's expense. Um, I think a company would, in the long run, profit more if it didn't have to make shorthanded deals or cut others off. Um, but I think a company that tries to go above and beyond and do things outside of its scope, um, becomes one, less profitable, and two, um, it it stops becoming just a company. Um, so, with the purpose of a company being to make money, I think that's what it should do, is make money for the people that are invested and have a stake in how it's ran. I mean, if you want to start up a company and lose money on purpose for whatever social goal you have, I mean, that's your prerogative. It's just, I can't find how that company is going to stay open without outside revenue. The rich are too highly taxed. I want to say no. I want to say yes. Um, it's one of those things where it's easy to say tax the rich. The rich need to pay their fair share, but how much is too much? How much is fair share? Um, I think I think we would. I think okay. If the tax laws could be enforced on the rich as they exist now, I think would be fine. I think the problem is that the loopholes that get talked about are there on purpose. And then you're more likely to get an audit, and to if you're poor than you are if you're rich. And I think that's a problem in itself. I think if you're rich, you I mean, yeah, if you get an audit as a rich person, you have the resources to fight back. Um, I think there should be, I don't want to say less protections. You want to be able to protect the individual, but I think the way the taxes are currently, it's so easy to not pay taxes, and then for a rich person to have the resources to just get away with it. That's not to say every rich person is an evil person who doesn't pay their taxes. Of course, you get the stories like Elon Musk, who has a record of paying the highest amount of taxes, um, and then you get, you know, and that's not the only story of a rich person who pays like a crazy amount of tax. I just think if we can collect um, everything that's supposed to be collected, I think we'll be fine. For there, I'm going to go ahead and say disagree. Strongly disagree. Also, for the sheer fact that I think tax in general and the amount that we're taxed, not just the rich, but even the poor, is unnecessary. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. Agree. I think there should be a standard level of care that, regardless of pay, you get. But if you have some super crazy rare disorder or medical thing that you got going on, but you got the money for it, like, why should you be denied? Um, if you have the ability to afford the doctor in America, then you should get the doctor of America. If he's charging crazy amounts, because he's gonna touch you and you're just gonna be magically healed. Um, yeah, but that's not to say I think there should be like a base level, because we definitely should be able to afford. That should definitely be something that's like it should be this hard to get something that basic. Um, there should be a floor, but there should be no ceiling there. I think that makes sense. Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public. The problem is the government also misleads the public. And so when we have businesses misleading the government and the government misleading the businesses, I think everyone is here. I'm going to go, I don't want to put agree, but I think one of the few purposes of government is to protect property, help enforce contracts, and that businesses that claim to do X with investment or, whatever. If they say they're gonna do one thing with your property and do another, and your property could just be your dollars, and they do something else, I think that is a violation of your, like, it's exploitative of your property. So it's hard with today's government, as wild as it is, to be trusted to do anything with misleading businesses, because you know there have been instances where the government has been leading businesses, and then at the end of the day, then the individual is the one getting screwed over at the end with no recourse. It's like, that sucks. But I think in theory, and I think, yeah, I'm definitely starting to get into the weeds, and part of that's because I'm getting tired. But in general, if a government was working correctly, it should penalize businesses that mislead the public. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. Whew. All right, that's a mouthful. A genuine free market Yes. Monopolies are not free markets. Monopolies are, at least in history, have been the effects of government intervention. And so, if there is something in place to stop the government from getting involved, to stop a monopoly from getting in place, that works. Or if there is a monopoly in place, for it to be broken up, so that there can be a free market. Um, I think is good. I think I agree with this. All right, we'll continue. All right, personal. Abortion when the woman's life is not threatened. Okay, and this is what I'm talking about when I said there's some cultural things. Obviously, some of these are still going to be authority, liberty oriented. But right into it. Abortion when the woman's life is not threatened should always be illegal. When so the way this is worded, if the woman's life is threatened, abortion is legal. Man, this is a hard one. And this question's only gotten more difficult over the years. Abortion when a woman's life is not in danger should always be illegal. It should be harder. I wouldn't say illegal. I think illegal is the wrong term. But of course, these questions are phrased to be that way on purpose. I wouldn't say illegal, but I think abortion should be hard to get if it's not life-threatening or rape. Because if it's not life-threatening or rape, then you start getting into that moral debate on, when it's okay. And that's a whole conversation for another day. But man, this is just, the wording here is so pushed to a specific direction that, and the context of today that is definitely influencing the way I'm thinking about this. And I get it. Like the instructions were to not think about this too much. Should always be illegal. I'm gonna go ahead and go disagree. It shouldn't be illegal, but it definitely should be hard. If the woman's life is not threatened, or is not, yeah, I'm gonna go with that. All authority should be questioned. Strongly agree. That's it for that. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Now, this is another one of those statements where I wonder what this scores for. I'm gonna assume this is a score for authority. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. A response of one nature warrants a response in a similar nature. No. Because one, just like on a very simple analysis, like violence only begets violence. So an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth ends with everyone with a broken face, or however the rest of that saying goes, or whatever. You know, I as much as I want to say yeah, I don't think that's the right answer. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. No, I think if the taxpayers elect to have one funded to put up for historical purposes, um, like this is the culture of this specific town, county, state, um, and I think the bigger the taxpayer base, the easier it'll be, because then your taxpayer pool will be a lot easier to, everyone has to pay another 50 cents per year or whatever to keep this thing running. Um, to say expected, though, I think that's the key word. If the taxpayers elect it, then it ought to be. But if the taxpayers don't want to prop up a theater or museum, then they shouldn't. So I think should not be expected. I think they shouldn't be expected if it's not something that they vote on. So I'm gonna go ahead and go with agree. But then again, man, because stuff like theaters or museum are what preserve stuff like tradition and history, which is what helps reproduce society. And if they don't have that marker where they can look back and understand some of the traditions or some of the things that may not be initially thought of or taught, but to have that reminder that's always there. I'm gonna leave it as agree, but I do think that you can make the argument that even if the taxpayers, if there's a specific body of the taxpayer that doesn't want it there, I think it is still good, because in the long run, you'll have people that go there and understand, the history and tradition of. I mean, and I guess I'm making the assumption that the theater or museum is one of relevance to the taxpaying body. Maybe that's why I'm going to leave it as agree that the taxpayer shouldn't be expected to prop it up, because if it's just some like art museum or whatever, and it's like, and it has no relevance to the taxpaying body, then no, you can't expect it to prop it up. But if it's like a Texas museum at the Texas Capitol, then you can make the argument that while a certain sect of the Texas population doesn't want to pay for this, and sometimes that body is going to be, the majority. I think leaving it there, because eventually, the people will come around, the culture will change and shift. They're going to realize, oh wait, no, this is good. Preserving this history and tradition is good. But no, I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it like this. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Agree. I don't like the way the public school system is ran. As a public school result myself, I mean, on its face, I understand why you want to make attendance mandatory. Just teaching that, hey, as an adult, you have to wake up and you gotta go to work every day. So, getting that habit instilled from school makes sense. But with the way schools are ran, no, think making, I think this can be done. Like the teaching that habit can be done elsewhere, not at school. All people have their rights, but it's better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their. Oh God, Jesus Christ! This is again that freaking racist. No, good parents sometimes have to spank their children. Agree. I don't think we hit our kids enough. I said it. I think kids need to be beat. I think it works. Now there obviously needs to be a balance stricken with the beating of the kids and the soft parenting. Somewhere a balance in between there is what is gonna work. Because eventually the beatings don't work. Yeah. And eventually the soft parenting doesn't work. So just having a mixture in there. But I think we definitely need to beat our kids. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. I think that's just natural adolescence. Now, of course, you'd want to be able to have a relationship with your parents where the child can go to the parents before anything, but that's just not always the case. You would just hope that whomever that the child, adolescent, confides in doesn't lead them astray, and that the parents are able to instill into their child, adolescent, that certain ideals that protect them from themselves. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Strongly agree. I think a lot of drugs should be decriminalized, not promoted, but definitely decriminalized. It should not be a crime to own. Drugs, I don't think. It, it's the fact that it's still a crime is baffling. I definitely don't support the widespread use of it. Everyone's going to react differently to every different, substance and chemical. This goes the same for a lot of drugs out there. It's not for everyone. But to keep people from using it, I think is like for one adult to tell another adult what you can and can't do is wrong. So it definitely shouldn't just be it's that simple. The primary function of schools should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. That is definitely what the current school is, but what it should be to reproduce society. Strongly disagree. The jobs will come naturally. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. It's another one of those tricky questions. If you have inheritable disabilities, should you be allowed to reproduce? I think to lean on individual freedom and err on the side of caution. Oops, wrong side. If someone with inheritable disabilities can reproduce, they should be allowed to. Yeah, to err on the side of individual rights. It's just gonna suck for the community that's gonna eventually have to help out when the parents of the disabled struggle to when they reproduce. But life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. No. Um, what is the most important thing a child can learn? I think the most important thing a child can learn is probably how to learn. Just learning how to learn is probably the most important thing a child can learn. Because having that sponginess and that ability to absorb knowledge and integrate that with previous knowledge and make those webs in the mind and move forward, being able to think critically, I think are more important skills rather than discipline. Discipline, very important. But if if you're, you know, brainless and disciplined, then what good are you? It I don't think there's as much to offer than someone who's able to think critically. Um, yeah. There are no savage and civilized people, there are only different cultures. No. There have definitely been savage. All of humanity used to be savage, and at some point we stopped. But it wasn't all at the same time. That's for sure. There was definitely a transition period where there were some savage people and some less savage people. Um, some less civilized and some more civilized, and that's where the savage versus civil debate comes in. But you know, it's it from caveman to now. I mean, I'm sure in the future we're gonna seem like savages to a future generation, but it's just a matter of, I guess, perspective. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. I agree. Uh, if you can, but you don't want to, then you ought to live with the consequences of your inaction. When you are troubled, it is better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. No, disagreeing. Um, if you're troubled, then there's a reason why you're troubled, and it's probably better to address the issue because it's probably not going to get better with time. Um, First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated with the new country. I think that is false. I think it's, with, I think any first generation immigrant can become fully integrated. It's just a matter of how well they put that effort. Now, of course, there's going to be. It's not. Well, yeah. It's not solely up to the immigrant because it's also part of the community in which they find themselves in. If the community will accept them, but right, assuming all things being equal, I think it's possible. I think, obviously there are first generation immigrants that don't try, um, but I think it's still possible. What's good for most successful corporations is always ultimately good for us all. When looking at the biggest companies today, I think we have benefited from things like Apple, Tesla, Amazon, Google. Um, yeah, those companies that have succeeded, we've all benefited from better service, better products. Sure, not everything is going to be easy along the way in terms of a successful corporation, but I think as a whole, on big picture, I think we benefit. We all get just better things in general. No broadcasting institution, however independent it is, however independent its content, should receive public funding. Yeah. I don't think ABC, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, Fox, OAN, any of these news companies should be getting public funding. Um, it skews the incentive to just say whatever you think the public wants to see or say. No, I think broadcasting institutions should just do the best they can. Um, and try and find funding from different sources, and then whichever broadcasting institution is the best will find themselves with the most viewers, the most money. Whew. All right, 4-6. Whew. Man, where are we at? An hour and a half, an hour and 40. Jesus Christ. All right, how I see wider society. I think I'm gonna try and speed this along because we're barely halfway through. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. Strongly agree. Now that counterterrorism is being turned domestic, and now we have teachers at PTA meetings getting turned into terrorists. A lot of civil liberties have been curtailed. Anyone that believes in sacrificing liberty for safety deserves neither, and will get neither. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments in a democratic political system. I mean, that is an advantage. I just think it's wrong. And you're probably still going to have a lot of bureaucracy and arguments within a party, as we find now, as an example. In one party state, just that nothing ever comes good from one party rule. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. Strongly disagree. The Fourth Amendment? That you can't just be randomly searched and seized without proper cause, something like that. And the surveillance of the electronic age is a violation of that unwarranted search and seizure. That we all, it's essentially like the right to privacy, like to be easily understood. We all have a right to privacy, even if we don't do anything wrong. No one should be watching over our back. What we do behind closed doors is our business. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious of crimes. Strongly agree. I think if you're accused and convicted and charged, and you go through all the steps and found guilty amongst a jury of your peers beyond a reasonable doubt, and you get your appeals, and it turns out nope, you're still guilty, and whatever, you get your retrials and whatnot. And I think there are obviously problems with the death penalty and innocent men being put to death, but assuming everything being correct, I think the death penalty, would definitely it should definitely be an option, just to let people know that you fuck around, you're gonna find out. In a civilized society, one must always have people above. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be. Fuck no. Fuck no. One above to be obeyed? Who in the right mind thinks they're God? No. No, not in society. Maybe in like other organizations, like maybe in your workplace, you can have one person that everyone has to listen to called the shift leader. Or in the military, when you have your commanders. No, not in regular society. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. Agree. I think it's trash and lazy. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. Man, I think rehabilitation should be a core function in criminal justice, but I think punishment is what it ought to be. Punishment should be more. Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and say agree. I think punishment is what you find through justice, and rehabilitation should come afterwards. Keyword should. Is a waste of time to try and rehabilitate some criminals. Agree. Some people are a lost cause. I mean, I don't think you shouldn't not try, but um, I think I do think there are some people that are beyond saving, and how you make that determination is beyond me. Um, because I know there's some. I mean, there are a bunch of stories of people that are like lost in the sauce, and eventually, like after so many years and so many crimes, they find their way out, and they get themselves on the straight and narrow. But it's only after so long. It's like if they didn't have that one chance or whatever, then they would have never done it or gotten out. But how do you find that is beyond me. But to say that everyone, 100% of people are able to be rehabilitated, I think, no. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Now, what I want to know is what this gives points to. If it gives points to left and right, maybe that's probably what it is. The artist. I mean, one can argue that the business person and the manufacturer are artists, depending on the what is being manufactured, what sector is being of the economy it is. That's not to say the artist and the writer don't have worth, but I think the manufacturer and the business person are more important. It's what they help turn the world. They help make the world go around. Even if it's not as interesting or fun, they have an important role as cogs in the machine that helps things move. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. I'm going to go ahead and agree. I'm going to strongly agree. I think the role of mothers is so important that we are now seeing what the neglect of that duty is doing to society as a whole. That women aren't being homemakers, and how that's leading to a deteriorating society. I mean, not much to be said. I think we need to have both strong mothers and strong fathers, and for both of them to do what their first duty is. For mothers, it's to be homemakers, and for fathers, it's to be protectors and providers. And in that union, where both people are doing what their role, what their duty is, that you'll find a a good balance where everything, like the whole, is taken care of. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. Unethically? Yeah, I think I'm only saying yes just because this is being done with the aid of governments. And that's really and really that's what's unethical, is that these companies are only doing it because they have the government's backing whatever the hell they're doing, and they wouldn't be able to get away with it if it wasn't for the aid of the government that they're using to exploit. Because these companies are only working for what's in their best interest, and will take it, as I guess, as far as they can. And if you know you can exploit to the greatest degree, and it costs people or costs the country, is it the company's fault, or is it the government that allowed the company to do it? Their fault. When the government that allows it had the ability to stop it in the first place. Right? Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. No. Um, no. I think if the establishment is corrupt or bad, you don't have to make a peace to it to be considered mature. I think you can still be mature and not make peace with an establishment if it's not correct. Okay, 5 and 6. If you got through that, okay, you'll find these propositions on religion, fear. Jesus fucking Christ. Astrology. Fucking fuck no. Why is this part of the political compass test? What is this? You cannot be moral without being religious. It doesn't matter what your morals come from a religion. You may not believe in that religion, but whatever it is that you do or don't believe, a certain aspect of your belief and your moral compass is going to come from certain aspects of religion. It doesn't have to be Christianity. It doesn't have to be Judaism. It doesn't have to be Islamic religions or whatever. But religions throughout human existence have shaped what the moral compass and what is deemed good, what is deemed okay, and what is deemed evil and not okay. Charity is better than social security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. Yes. Charity targets better and is less taxing on everyone. And if you're genuinely disadvantaged, especially if you're genuinely disadvantaged, there's going to be a charity that specifically targets your group. Some people are naturally unlucky. Yeah. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. If it is your religious values, yes. If it is the wrong religious values, no. Yeah. If it is, if it is your religious values, then yes. If it is the wrong religious values, then no. And I think that's really the big distinction. But assuming that it is your religious values, then yes. Because I think the purpose of school is to recreate society. and considering that the good society, well, the society that founded the nation with the ideas that make this country so much more different from all the other ones is founded on Judeo-Christian beliefs. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and live with agree, not strongly agree. Okay, sex. Why is this? Okay, whatever. How does this left right? Sex outside of marriage is usually immoral. Yes. Yeah. Man, that's a hard one. Again, this is a weird question for politics. I guess I can understand why it's in here. Ideally, you and your partner, before you get married, have as few partners as possible. Um, right. Your if you get divorced once, you're more likely to get divorced twice, which means you're more likely to be divorced 3 times, and so on and so forth. Now, what is found is that people who have a plethora of partners have a hard time making connections, that spiritual, emotional connections with future partners if they have a bunch of partners than people who don't have as many partners. And so, in order to create good bonds between people, you would like to discourage promiscuity. Immoral. What a strong word. I don't want to say agree, but I understand the side effects of multiple partners, especially like super, super promiscuous males and females. I think super, super promiscuous males and females, like, they both have a hard time. A same-sex couple in a stable living relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. I think they shouldn't be excluded, but I think male female should be preferred, but not excluded. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. While I don't, while I think it is deleterious to one's mental health, I don't think you should be denied it the same way you shouldn't be denied drugs. Whatever you want to do is up to you. If you want to destroy your own mental health, your own physical health, like, that's your call. Let's see. What goes on in the private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Strongly agree. It's simple as that. Why does the government has no business between two consenting adults, regardless. No one can feel naturally homosexual. Disagree. I'd have to relook, but if from my understanding, homosexuality is there is an aspect of inheritability that it is a genetic, but like, there are some people that you see growing up that you just know that they're gonna be gay, and then they come out in like middle school, high school, and it's like, yeah, we all knew. And then there's some people that kind of just do it because it's like because it's a social trend, in which those people were not naturally homosexual. Like, eventually they came around to the idea, but there are some people who are just born gay. But I'd have to double check that. But I'm pretty sure that some people were just born gay. These days, openness about sex. Oh, absolutely. Sex is, especially in 2023, sex has absolutely gone too far. Alright, where the fuck am I? A starting point, original, political, it is certainly fine discussing economics. This data is still widely and wrongly used to describe social attitudes. Yeah, this is something that I think I was trying to talk about because left and right is also used to describe social attitudes, which isn't always correct. Right in France, they're considered far right, but their economics is left. Um, let's see. Yeah, freaking. I think China is supposed to be a little bit more to the left, and yeah, they well, what they you know, I want to say yeah they more to the left, but since the '90s, they've been on they've been adopting more capitalistic enterprises into their borders, but still they operate them like state-run businesses. I would like to see China a little bit more to the left. Hmm. All right, where the fuck am I? Here I am. Right, libertarian. Yeah, I figured as much. Okay, yeah, this is more or less where I found I would have expected myself to be. I would have expected maybe a little bit like deeper into the purple. Um, I think in college I probably found myself a little bit more here on both sides of the spectrum, maybe bouncing between one semester and the other. Um, but no, at least today, this is where I more or less expected to find myself, right libertarian. Um, let's see. Jeez, a certificate. Let's see. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been fun. It's been 2 hours. Jeez. Maybe I'll take the other ones sometime this week. Or maybe I'll talk about something else. Um, but yeah. It's been fun. Maybe we'll talk about some more. Maybe we'll get into further depth of what these, find examples in history of what these different factions were, how they pop up in different forms of media, whether it be movies, video games, you know, stuff like that. Um, but well, it's definitely been fun trying to break some of this stuff down. It's man, to be 1.5 points below the moderate line here and 3.5 points away from the moderate line here. Like this whole like inner circle here is just like this is where most people in America are probably gonna line up, or anyone that really takes this test are probably gonna line up right here. I imagine. I don't know. I mean, I'm the only one that I know that's taking this test. Maybe I'll ask some friends to take it, but it's been fun breaking all this stuff down. I definitely have my gripes with the way some of these questions are worded. I get why the questions are or the statements are worded the way they're worded, to invoke reaction and get you to answer a specific way, and to make an answer in one way or the other. Um, but, but yeah, this has been my political compass test. I guess moving forward, now we'll know. You'll have some background on where I'm thinking, and I mean I'm still gonna, I guess, explain my position, even though like we've done this. I'm still gonna be like, oh, this is why I think this and whatnot. But yeah, in terms of left, Jesus Christ, I'm tired. Left, right, in terms of the economic scale, and I think a little bit. I don't know how much it encompasses that cultural and aspect of it. And then further on the libertarian scale, I thought I'd be a little bit more further down here on the libertarian scale, but whatever. This is what it says. I mean, I'm gonna for myself. Um, I'm gonna move this down a little bit further in my own head. But yeah. Well, this has been fun. I don't know when the next episode's coming out, but here's this one. Hopefully, you had fun with me. Hopefully, maybe you thought about some of these questions yourself. Let me know what you thought. Maybe I'm wrong on some of these things, and you can explain to me why I'm wrong. But yeah, we'll see what the future holds. Still gonna try and figure out how I want to do things here on this channel. I don't know if I'm gonna continue to do news day to day, like I did the previous episodes, just because I don't have that set schedule that I can always do and keep up to date. Because it's been a couple months, not just a couple days or a couple weeks. It's been a couple months, and to go back on some of those old topics is gonna be rough. Just because with the way the news cycles work, a lot of that stuff that was in the news then is not going to be the news now. So if I try to find some up-to-date stuff, it's going to be outdated, far and few in between. But that's not to say that I can't jump on some of that stuff. But we'll see. I'm trying and get some of that big picture stuff and try and rope in some of the goings-ons of the day and the week into some of that big picture stuff that we'll talk about. But yeah. I guess I'll see y'all next time. Thanks for watching. Support in any way you can, and whatnot. Go ahead and let me know what you think. But yeah, thanks for watching.